Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. I'm your host, Dean Jones. This is Season 10, Episode 20. In this podcast episode, we're going to be talking about all things barbecue. I'll be interviewing one of the best barbecue experts in the business, and we'll be getting the inside scoop on everything from the different types of barbecue to the best way to cook it. So whether you're a barbecue novice or a seasoned pro, this episode's for you. With us today is Ryan Mitchell, son of Barbecue Hall of Famer Ed Mitchell from Wilson, North Carolina. Ryan is the businessman behind the family brand, and at a very young age, Ryan began working in the Mitchell family restaurant. They have a new restaurant, The Preserve, that will open this year, but they do have a current food catering business, Q on Wheels. Not with us today is co-author and Ryan's father, Ed Mitchell, who is an American pitmaster and businessman. Mitchell frequently made media appearances and advocacy for the use of heritage bred pork, and has earned him the title of the most famous pitmaster in North Carolina. Mitchell has appeared in Bon Appetit and Throwdown with Flay, and National Geographic, as well as appearance on Anthony Bourdain's Cook's Tour. I'll be taking you to my conversation with Ryan Mitchell to talk about he and his father's new book, Ed Mitchell's Barbecue. Welcome to the Well Seasoned Librarian Podcast. Today on the show, I have Ryan Mitchell here to talk about the new book, Ed Mitchell's Barbecue, which is going to be coming out tomorrow, June 6th, as of this recording. And we're going to have a link to the purchasing the book ahead of time in the bio if you want to get a copy of it today. And you could also get it through all better bookstores. So Ryan, thanks for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now, the big question first, I got to ask this, what inspired you to write this book now?
Well, if I could just take you back just a few years, the actual, publishing deal or the dream of actually being able to do a book started about 2015. So we, after about 10, 12 years of doing the Big Apple Block Party, which is headlined in New York City, we began to get approached by, a few literary agents who are just fans of our food at that time. And so the Big Apple Block Party, man, it's a stage to where, we served over 100,000 people in like 6 days. Us and all the best pit masters in the country got invited to do this festival. And, at that particular moment, a fan a fan of our food who happened to be working for a literary agency approached us and said, hey, there's a very unique opportunity here for you guys to be the first African-American pitmasters to tell your own story and write your own book. Now, we have been in plenty of books, and, we have, have always been everybody else's first stop on, covering, different stories about barbecue. But we were approached with the opportunity to kind of write our own story. And that was, that's what started the wheels in motion. My family has 150 years of barbecue legacy. So, I convinced my dad that, hey, man, our story needs to be, put out in our own words and, to kind of give our ancestors a voice, in this thing and tell the world about North Carolina barbecue.
I really love that about the book. For those of you who are going to be reading it, it's got a little bit of everything in it. And I really like the fact that it talked about your family history. It talked about your story. It was very well done and very well documented. Of course, there's cookbook elements in there too, but it also is a lot of biography, which I really loved. And I found very fascinating and poignant. And I want to touch on some of that later. But you talk about your barbecuing and your grilling in the book. What are some of the things that make your grilling techniques unique?
Well, here in the Carolinas, first and foremost, we kind of specialize in the whole hog. So whole hog barbecue is a unique form of barbecue for the North Carolina region, for the state. And so first, we wanted to get a chance to kind of get that story, get that piece of our history out as included in the book. So our barbecue is inclusive of, and when all the flavor and all of the techniques that go along with mastering the craft of cooking the whole animal. So that sets us apart. And then aside from that, we kind of tap into some hot and fast techniques. Some, oak wood and charcoal is our claim to fame as far as the type of fire that we try to get going for our barbecue. And aside from that, it's just specific ingredients that are tailored in there. Apple cider vinegar, is a key theme throughout the book, because it has such a historical presence in the preservation and the flavor of the type of barbecue that we do. And so, just certain techniques of the craft that we try to sprinkle in here and there.
Now I'm going to ask this next question for the listeners, but I'm also asking for myself because I'm struggling as somebody who likes doing barbecue. I'm really bad at it, and I want to get better. So I really was happy to get your book because it really is helping me. What are some of the step-by-step processes for creating the perfect barbecue?
Well, I always tell everybody like this, first and foremost, an indirect form of setting up your fire, a grilling, is going to be, not only your safest choice, but it's going to teach you the most about kind of like the relationship between the fire and the meat that you're barbecuing. Each cut of meat, each larger portions of meat like pork that may have a little bit more fat and grease in it is gonna show you where your flame ups kind of come from if you start by just building your fire in an indirect fashion. All right. And then you can kind of see where the flame ups are and where the problems may come in for fire. And then once you master keeping your fire under control, then the rest is just, it's all about just letting the meat just kind of, smoke and get up to temperature, that's going to be taste worthy. So, first and foremost, natural forms of cooking, we use charcoal and wood. That's going to give you the best flavor, in my opinion. And then using, a rectangular style grill also gives you, the latitude to kind of move your, items around on the grill so that you aren't, burning up one while one is on, while one is not cooking. It kind of lets you kind of understand the hot points of your grill just a little bit better.
What's the most interesting thing you've learned on your journey to becoming a barbecue master?
The most interesting thing is going to be really the connectivity to the customer. Like people are so interested about like the relationship between, but like barbecuing is has such a spiritual element to it that people are just fascinated, and they find it to be kind of a form of therapy. There's much more easier ways to kind of prepare your food, especially in this world we're living right now. But the interesting thing to me about barbecue and what we've been doing is that how people year after year, the connectivity to learning how to barbecue to the people, it just grows. Barbecue is the only cuisine with its own season. And so every year, right around, June, May, June, we get to kind of re-enter this world where people really want to understand about barbecue and whether it's the act of barbecuing or the actual, menu item that we call chop barbecue. The interest just never dies. And that's a beautiful thing because you always get a chance to teach and be helpful.
Now, is there any tips you can give somebody like me who's barbecuing at home on the home grill?
Yeah. So, again, just kind of my primary suggestion, again, is starting with the indirect style of grilling, then starting with smaller forms, smaller cuts of meat. In general, your pork chops on the pork side, pork chops and sausages are going to give you, a nice way to learn how to prepare pork, medium and smaller cuts of steak. And then, from the chicken side, I start with cuts and pieces of the chicken, like, your wings, your breast and your thigh, cut leg cuts. Just starting with smaller quantities of meat so you can kind of understand, don't try to fill up the grill, just because you have all this space, just kind of take it, every square inch, take it step by step. and then as you get more comfortable with, how your grill operates, then you can kind of fill it up, because there's nothing worse than getting a full rack of food on the grill and then, everything kind of catching on fire.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
you losing everything you have on the grill. If when you're cooking from an indirect play, and you have to figure out how to take all this food off, at one time.
Yeah, I've kind of had that happen before. I know what that's like.
Yeah, man. And you don't have to use the whole bag of charcoal. If you're cooking with charcoal, you don't have to empty the bag in there, and get it piping hot. Just learn what temperature highlights the grill that you're using. Some smokers, some grills, they can hit up to 350, 400 very fast. And so then take a whole lot of charcoal or wood.
I see a lot of tools are being sold and all these new gadgets and everything. What do you think is the best tips for a beginning barbecue chef that they should get?
I've been trying to find my way with these new gadgets and things. I think they are helpful, but I don't think there's anything that can beat you learning how to eyeball when a piece of meat is done. Like I said, the relationship between a piece of fish and the fire is totally different between beef and fire. So learning what proteins get done and how they get done and how fast it takes them to get done at what temperature is something that I suggest people just try, without any of the gadgets first. But that also gives you the spiritual element, the connectivity to the grill between you as the pit master is preparing something for your family. It just teaches you how to keep an eye on things and keep an eye on, how your food is being prepared. Now the gadgets, the heat thermometers are really cool. At the end of the day, if you're smoking meat, it could take a little bit longer to get to the right temperature, or to get the right amount of smoke into your food as it relates to just trying to cook straight up to a really fast temperature,
In 2019, you announced you'd open up a new restaurant, The Preserve, in Raleigh.
Yes.
The restaurant is focused on the history of barbecue in North Carolina and uses pigs raised specifically for barbecue. Can you talk about this a bit for our listeners?
Absolutely. The Preserve is going to be our, kind of within the namesake, we are preserving the art of whole hog barbecue, also preserving the art of hospitality with my family, and also another cornerstone restaurant operating family here in Raleigh, the Mashakas family. Our friendship and relationship goes back about 20 years with my father. So we have decided to kind of bring two worlds together and really give the triangle, a taste of nostalgia, so to say. So the restaurant is going to be situated right here in Raleigh, right off of Creekside Drive. We're going to be, a freestanding building that is going to have a nice indoor-outdoor patio seating, connectivity to one of the local creeks out back, so people could kind of have that feel of, not necessarily out in the woods, but the nature, the sense of nature while you're enjoying your food, especially your barbecue is going to be incorporated as well. We're going to be cooking whole hog barbecue, obviously, traditional sides, and we're going to be highlighting the pit masters. Those guys are put in the most of the work back there and over the grills, and you'll be able to come inside the restaurant and actually get a visual sense of what those guys are grilling up for the day. And so I think that's going to be a really cool element for the customer interaction to kind of see who's on the grill for the day and how their food is kind of coming out as it's prepared.
This episode is sponsored by Culinary Historians of Northern California, a Bay Area educational group dedicated to the study of food, drink, and culture in human history. To learn more about this organization and their work, please visit their website at www.chnorcal.org. So in 2003, you had plans to build a network of small farmers to breed free-range pigs for your barbecue restaurant, which I think is wonderful and brilliant.
Yeah.
And but this, I read in the book. I was reading the book, and I was like kind of reading along and smiling, and then I saw these parts where it was talking about this time period, and I was kind of surprised, to be honest, and then also not surprised. So the STEM tax problems that suddenly came up. And I was reading about a lot of, I was really surprised. I thought there was a lot of unfair behavior by the bank and the tax board there locally. I guess people were threatened because they thought you were going to pose a threat to what, quote unquote, traditional industrial hog butchers. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, definitely. That was a very, for me as a young man, kind of watching, at this time, my father and my family, we're running, the barbecue side of the restaurant. As it's a real commercial full-time restaurant now. We got customers coming from all over the world. But our commitment to whole hog barbecue and natural flames and oak wood and charcoal was separating us from the competition. So what happens is the foodies from around the country, when they come in, they had gravitated to talking about us and talking about what we were doing, i.e. preserving the art of that. And so we began to get more headlines and more attention when all we were just trying to do is just, stick with a farm to table style of barbecue where we were buying from smaller farmers who had not been, over in, so segmented to the commercialized commodity hogs is what we called it. But simultaneously, you have to understand that the hog is the economic engine, one of the main economic engines of our state. And so the quote unquote, I call it like the golden corral trough feeding of large volumes of people for restaurants was where the money was, and so
yeah,
a lot of the bigger restaurants and bigger barbecue places had moved over to, high volume, commodity style cooking a barbecue, which also turned over, a lot of, the plate service and the amount of people that they're serving was great for the hog industry because you're buying pork and, all of the hogs that they can, raise up were getting sold. And the attention was going to the restaurants. And, as a state, we're exporting commodity hogs at a rate, much larger than everybody else.
Yeah.
And so here comes this guy who's getting all this attention from the big folks in New York who's saying, oh, well, that might not be the best tasting thing. And so now, as a chef, you're like, oh man, I was just saying I want to cook some natural hogs. I'm not saying don't go buy it from those guys, or
Right.
those companies. It's almost like the theory of pulling up to the gas station. It's like you got three choices. You got premium, regular, and plus, so
Yeah.
we were just trying to give the customers an option to say, hey, not that we're any better, but if you want a natural animal or want an animal that has been raised in a natural setting, well, we have that for you. And if it doesn't matter, then hey, those other guys got some really good food too. You can go up the street, So along with that attention comes, just a bunch of practices that were, abnormal to a small business. I mean, we're still not even, we're a small business, man. Just trying to survive. We weren't, raking in, mountains of cash here. So we get over to, some politics. Well, I call it pork politics that come into play when someone is a threat in the industry. And we began to get targeted for some things that, in my honest opinion, wasn't even, things we didn't even know about. It's also the 2000s, where, to be honest, the economy for our city is still trying to deal with making the transition from cash to credit card. So,
Yeah.
Small businesses are always at the bottom of having the technology and the wherewithal to deal with all the paperwork and all of the other, nuances that come with trying to run a business as well as be in business. We didn't have a HR department, just a one-man accounting company that comes in and helps us out. We're just trying to survive. And so we were late sending in sales tax, a few months. And so this, they just kind of leverage that to kind of do what, bring some, I don't, just bring some unnecessary roadblocks into, what it is we were trying to do. And, that's how it all began. But it's also how it all, came to be, one of the best stories in the barbecue industry as well.
It's maddening to me because I just see this like locally too. Restaurants close up. We've had a lot of restaurants and small scale food operations closing around the Bay Area. It's, the pandemic was horrible.
Right.
A lot of restaurants went under and food producers went under. And I haven't seen a lot of help from the city in helping a lot of these small businesses. And the thing is, like, as just regular Joe guy walking down the street, I'm
Right.
like, it would seem smart to help these small individuals and help them
Absolutely.
stay afloat and be alive. Like if they have tax issues, say, hey, we'll step in and help you.
Right.
Just you want to keep that lifeblood going. Otherwise, we see towns dying across the country. It
That's
happens. It's a
exactly
thing. And like it starts with the small businesses, right?
very much so. It starts with a small business. I mean, that was kind of like the, like even when the pandemic happened, I, you know, I tell people all the time, in some phase, in some format of another, small businesses have been having to deal with some sort of a turmoil similar to the pandemic, all the time, since we
Yeah.
ever been open. So, it's not like they sent someone in there to help, and we weren't trying to, like, before you send someone in there to try and press charges, you should have a division that comes in and teaches, like, hey, these are the things and steps you can take and that you should be taking, like send advocates in to
Yeah.
help with some of the book work and paperwork before you say, oh, here's what you didn't do, and we're gonna, here's the penalties. Like, a lot of businesses, we're just kicking off trying to live a dream. It's not like
Yeah.
it wasn't like there was millions of dollars. We weren't even breaking, a couple $1,000 a month, at that time. So there were
Yeah.
just bigger fish to fry, but
Yeah.
the problem is when you're doing something small and meaningful and impactful, then a lot of times you know, those are the things that get the biggest voices, right? And those
Yeah.
are the things that people respect more. And so they talk about you more. And the guys who are making all the money and who are running, these high level operations, they're just kind of, business as usual. They're not doing anything, uniquely special, so they don't get the voice.
Yeah.
And that's a difficult thing to kind of run through.
What was was there a lot of backpedaling from the tax agencies and the banks when this went depressed? Because this was pretty well publicized. I imagine they kind of must have looked like
Yeah,
they had egg on their face a little bit, didn't they?
a whole bunch, man. And then they, it's like, dude, you really shut down. You really gave a not just a black man, but any human being, you really gave this guy weekend jail time for uh $645.
Yeah.
And then and then when you add on penalties, it was maybe like $1,500 of late. of late filing, not filing, but late filing, you really gave a person, you're really using your resources down there to give a citizen weekend jail time for less than $1,000 over the course of like 5 years. So it begins to, highlight, the bigger picture, the unfairness that comes along with trying to be in the business. And so,
Yeah, it was pretty egregious. I was like surprised that my mouth was open when I was reading that stuff. I'll tell you.
very much. So, people began to, and then, but then, then people began to kind of, champion you, because there's no way that they just didn't believe that was the case. But, it was. So then people get more interested in what it is you're talking about. They get more interested now trying to find where is the best, who's raising the best animals. Now the Humane Society and all these certificates and all of these programs are zoning in on you now, because it's like, you must have something to hide, right? Not us, but like the industry is zoning in. So now, fast forward like 5, 6, 7 years later, now everybody, you go in a grocery store now, and all of a sudden you see on shelf options. Now you have pork from some of the local producers that are, this is organic and this is free range, and now they're labeling things in the grocery store and buying into what it is you were trying to sell, in your restaurant. So it was kind of interesting to see the product change from the providers, like all of a sudden now, oh wait, there is a market of people who want to know where their food comes from.
Well, yeah, too. I mean, also, like I was thinking too, my first thought was maybe the FBI needs to investigate these large scale hog producers if they're having this kind of influence in somebody's life. This is kind of some Sopranos stuff, man. This is racketeering.
Racketeering at its best, man. So
yeah. Well, I was looking at the book, and I was really, really in love with the photographs in the book. It was very lovingly photographed, and just something as simple as the plate of collards, the Brussels. I mean, when people can make Brussels sprouts look good, you're a good photographer. And the candied yam, everything was each little photograph was like a work of art. I mean, what did it feel like for you to get this, the first copy of this book when you saw it, and then the wonderful photos of your family and just you and your father? What was it like for you to see this when you got it?
Man, it was really mind blowing. I mean, to be, we once we set the stage of how the project was gonna kind of roll out and the photography, we sat down with our photographer and we mapped out this pathway of saying, hey, in order for this book to stand out, I really want to show what my grandparents and my mom and my sisters, I really want to show what our region did to to uplift and upscale sort of the country dinner table. And so the photography is based on trying to give an elevated pitch to some of these foods that are traditionally Southern, because these were just techniques that my grandparents and my mom and people around my city would use to kind of take some of these foods and kind of give them a different vibe, give them a different feel at the dinner table. Just so they wouldn't have to feel like you were at a checkered cloth or checkered table, somewhere just kind of eating in environments. Because to be quite honest, the culture in most of these and all of these barbecue places were, as Black folk, we weren't allowed to eat in the main dining rooms, as you would well know, we weren't allowed to eat inside of the main dining rooms where the proper etiquette and service was. We had to go to the back door. We had to go to, or not go at all, And so my grandmother would elevate the kitchen table and dinner table to kind of give us this feel that what they don't, if they don't not gonna let us in there, don't worry about it. We're gonna eat really good right here at home. And so she just changed the plating on everything, right? Just to change the weight and the heaviness of not being able to go. And so the photography is kind of geared to show these country foods, but in a different element. And so they did. I mean, I was like Bax Miller and her photography team. And the best part about it was at each stage of the book, we had 3 different generations on each end, right, contributing. So it's myself and my father and my family. Our co-writer, Zella Palmer, her mother and her great aunts who are like 90 years old were helping out with some of the research. And then on the photography side, Bax Miller and her mother and her 92-year-old grandmother was helping set some of the plates up and do the plating of the photography. So each contributing name had, you know, some generational family members that were there to kind of, you know, guide the process, man. And that made me feel, you know, better than anything, that everybody had a little, you know, bit to do with it.
There's a chapter early on in the book that has a wonderful story that talks about how this kind of journey began with you making lunch for your mother. Can you tell our listeners that story? Because I love it.
Absolutely. So, you know, this is my dad's story. This is his entry back into the barbecue business. You know, my grandfather passed away in 1991. And at that time, you know, my grandparents ran their corner grocery store as just a typical neighborhood grocery store that sold fresh meats, cheeses, produce, you know, the liking. But upon my grandfather's passing, you know, we had to kind of figure out just what we were going to do different, you know, with the property, because, you know, he was the primary breadwinner, and, you know, things within the estate wasn't all together. So we were trying to find, you know, just how to save the business, save the family. And so my grandmother's therapy, you know, is cooking. You know, she just cooks, you know, and just, if nobody's there to eat it, she'll give it away to the neighbors. You know, that's how she lives, right? And so one day she was just preparing family dinner at the restaurant. She was making some fresh greens, and we decided to just put on a small pig, which was just going to be used for, you know, family lunch for the rest of the week. And, you know, we got the food done, and we were sitting in there eating, you know, our, you know, dinner at the restaurant before we went home and closed up for the day, at the grocery store before we closed home for the day. And a customer comes up to the door after we had locked the door, and he was kind of shaking it, you know, and it makes a very loud noise. It makes a very loud noise because the deadbolt lock is on, and it feels like, oh my God, somebody's trying to break in.
Yeah.
So my dad, you know, I'm a little kid, and I'm sitting in the back. My dad jumps up, and my uncles jump up. They go up to the door like, hey, who is it? You know, somebody trying to rob us. What's going on? And it's like, oh no, man. You know, we was wondering if you guys had any more of that barbecue left. We were trying to buy some. Now, an hour earlier, there was a family friend who just so happened to be in there chit-chatting with us. And my grandmother gave this guy a sandwich for his dinner, just gave it to him, right? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he goes off into the neighborhood and eating it and telling everybody how good it is. And he tells the you know, the guys on the corners, like, hey man, the Mitchells them got some barbecue, man. You better go down there and get you some. And so the guys on the corner just start walking up, you know, looking for barbecue. And it was like, nah, man, we don't got none, but maybe we'll have some tomorrow, you know. So the guy leaves, and my dad and my grandma just kind of look at each other like, you know, I don't know, maybe we can sell a few of these sandwiches and stuff maybe tomorrow and see how it goes. Now, you know, we don't have any idea that it's going to be anything significant, but the next day turns into, you know, 5 sandwiches. The day after that turns into 10 sandwiches. The day after that turns into, you know, like cooking a larger hog. And then finally we was like, hold up, you know, before we just flip the switch here and turn it into a restaurant. We got to get some stuff. We got to get some,
Yeah.
some stuff in place here, and some, we got to call the health department. Like nobody knows what to do. All we know,
Yeah.
we just have like people from the community flooding the store, wanting to buy cooked food.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, let's want to buy my grandma's dinner, so we get, piece by piece, we get new pieces of equipment, we make the calls to the health department, they come down and help us figure out, how to turn this little place and get inspected, and what it's going to take to do that, put together a little plan, and, off comes, off comes Mitchell's chicken and barbecue.
See, I love that story, but like if that was a movie, it'd be all like sunshine and twinkling and everything. But like in real life, I've worked in kitchens, and it's like that's, to me, just I had anxiety spiking just thinking about that.
Yes.
It must have been like just
Dude,
that must have been a crazy time.
Heck yeah. Like you're not, like you're selling, like you don't have any, no permitting, no anything going on. You just give it this, we were so scared to take money. We didn't take money for a long time, until for weeks, because it was like, dang man, like I know these guys coming in, guys were just putting 5s and 10s in a tip jar, because it was like, dude, we can't not to sell you any of our dinner. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But like, here you can have some. Right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
And it's like, oh my God, how do we, but they know my grandmother from the church, and they know her cleanliness, and how she cleans up the church and cleans up, the Sunday dinners at the churches. They know her cleanliness from coming over to the house, so they don't have any apprehension about the sanitation. There's like, no, hey, Miss Mitchell involved, we know it's good. Here, take our money. And but as you know, that's not how it's supposed to go. But that was the beauty so at that point we literally, like huddled up and says, hey, let's try to make some barbecue and change the world. And I'm as a little kid, I'm like, at this point, I don't say little, I'm 13. I'm looking around like, what? We're gonna sell barbecue sandwiches and change the world? Okay, you know what I mean? So it was really a journey for me as a young man, kind of watching all this unfold.
I love that story, and it's a beautiful story, and it's a beautiful cookbook, and I really want to encourage people to go out and get it. And as I said, you can get it through the links in pre-sale. It'll be available tomorrow through wide distribution, and you can get it all at all better bookstores. Ryan, I want to thank you for being on the podcast. I really love getting a chance to talk to you. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you so much, man. Much success with the show.
That was my conversation with pitmaster Ryan Mitchell. He and his father, Ed Mitchell, have a new book, Ed Mitchell's Barbecue, that'll be out today. Next week, we're going to have on the program comedian, podcaster, actor, Dan Adut. He'll be talking with us about his new book, Undercooked. We'll be having him on the podcast next week. Until then, I'll see you in the library.